Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another adventure with Reading with Grandma. We are continuing in the series of the stories my mother wrote for her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. This is an early story of hers. It's called The Curious Chipmunk. This story is actually based on a time when she was younger and the adventures she had with her brother and her sister going to the country fair. Some of the adventures in here really happened to her brother, and the only thing that didn't was that he didn't really get caught into a trap, but he did get caught. So let's start the story, The Curious Chipmunk. In the woods lived a family of chipmunks. Mr. and Mrs. Chipmunk had 3 children. Their names were Cindy, Mindy, and Lindsay. Of the 3, Lindsay was the most mischievous and the most curious. He was so curious that one day he climbed up on a high stool to see what was in the bag his mother kept on the topmost shelf. He wasn't quite tall enough, but being curious, he stretched until he reached the edge of the bag. Down tumbled the chipmunk's supply of nuts. They tumbled all over the kitchen floor and onto everything sitting on the cupboard's counters. It took Mother a long time to collect them all with Lindsay's help. Next, he saw something in the bottom of the clothes basket. Being curious, he hurriedly dumped the clothes onto the floor. Just then his mother came into the kitchen and saw all the clothes she had just washed and dried, spoiled all over the floor. What a mess! She saw Lindsay in the middle of the mess and asked him what had happened. He told her that he thought he saw a mouse in the bottom of the basket and had wanted to catch it. "Oh, so you just dumped the clean clothes all over the floor," his mother said. "What am I going to do with you, Lindsay? Now just you sit yourself down in that corner facing the wall until I tell you to get up. I've had enough of your mischief today." When Father came home for supper, Mother told him about Lindsay's behavior that day. Father looked over his glasses at Lindsay. "Son, what have you got to say for yourself?" Lindsay replied that he wanted to know what was in the bag on the shelf, so he had climbed up to see what it was. All the nuts had come tumbling down, scaring him half to death. Then he said, "I didn't mean to spill the nuts or dump the clothes onto the floor. I only tried to get the mouse that was in the bottom of the clothes basket." Father told him he had better stop being so curious. It could get him into more trouble than he was in right now. For a while, Lindsay behaved well. Then one day, as he was walking in the woods, he spied something white and furry under a nearby bush. He peered under the bush, but couldn't quite see what it was. He waited for a few minutes, hoping whatever it was would come out. He waited for what seemed like a long time, but the thing did not move. What could it be, he wondered. He found a stick lying on the ground and poked at the white furry thing. All of a sudden it moved. And as it did, a terrible odor engulfed him. "Phew, that's terrible," Lindsay thought to himself. He not only smelled terrible, but he was frightened. He couldn't imagine what could make that awful smell. He ran home, choking and sobbing. "Mother, Mother," he choked as he neared the door. Mother came running. "Oh, Lindsay, what have you done now?" "I don't know, Mother. I saw this white fluffy thing under a bush, and I tried to see what it was. When the thing wouldn't come out, I poked it with a stick. All of a sudden, I smelled this awful odor. What is it, Mother?" His mother replied that he had routed a skunk out from under the bush. "What am I going to do with you, child?" She took him into the house and washed him with some lye soap. He didn't like it one bit, but his mother told him it was too bad. Next time he might be more careful about seeing what was under bushes. Soon he was clean again and didn't smell so bad. His mother told him that he had better sit down in his room and think about what his curiosity had gotten him into. Maybe he wouldn't be so eager next time. Lindsay went into his room and sat down. He wondered why the skunk had done that to him. A few days later, Mother announced to the children they were going to the fair. They jumped up and down, excited that they would be able to go. Lindsay was especially glad. His mother had been upset at his recent antics, and he was afraid for a minute that his mother would tell him he'd have to stay home. However, Mother only told him he would have to be on his best behavior. No curiosity excursions. When they arrived at the fair, the children all begged their mother to go on the merry-go-round. Mother bought 3 tickets at the booth and helped the children into the horses. Soon they were whirling around and having lots of fun. The ride ended, and they wanted more. "Not right now, children," the mother replied. "Let's walk around and see what else is here. Maybe you'll find another ride that you would like to go on." They walked along, looking at all the things that were for sale, and also saw a lot of games to play. They stopped to watch a game being played. Cindy and Mindy were enjoying themselves, but Lindsay soon tired of watching and looked around to see what else the fair had to offer. Before you could say Jack Rabbit, he was off. He came to a high fence, but he couldn't see what was behind it. He looked through the small cracks, but they weren't wide enough to see anything clearly. He walked all the way around the fence, but still couldn't figure out what was behind it. He finally came to a place where there was a loose board. He nudged it and moved it so he could squeeze through. What he saw frightened him more than anything in his whole life. There were 3 huge lions behind the fence. Of course, he didn't know they were lions. He just knew that they were larger than anything he had ever seen, and he was scared. Fortunately, he was small, and they did not see him. He thought he'd better get out while he could, and before these big beasts spotted him, he ran, but in his confusion couldn't find the loose board right away. He kept close to the fence and ran, testing each of the boards as he hurried on. He finally found the loose board and scurried through it. Now to find his family. If his mother had discovered he was gone, she would be worried and probably very mad at him. Why hadn't he stayed by his mother? He hurried along, looking all around for his mothers and sisters. He spotted them at the fruit drink stand. As he came up to them, his mother asked where he had been. "Just looking at that game over there," he replied in a weak voice. He was afraid that if he had told her about his misadventure, she would really scold him. "I see," said his mother. "Would you like something to drink, Lindsay?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "I would like a large glass of lemonade, please." "All right," said his mother, "but you had better stay close. Maybe I will buy a ticket for each of you to go on the Ferris wheel." Lindsay had a feeling his mother didn't quite believe him about looking at the game, but he didn't want to press his luck, so he kept quiet. They walked around and looked over the rest of the fairgrounds. As they passed the Ferris wheel, Mother asked if they would like to ride on it. Cindy and Mindy both said they were afraid to ride it, but Lindsay said he would like to try. His mother bought him a ticket, and he climbed onto one of the seats. Soon he was high up in the air. He could see the whole fairgrounds. It was very exciting. All too soon the ride was over. His mother and sisters were waiting for him as he climbed down from the seat. He wanted another ride, but Mother told him it was getting late. They would soon have to go. They had some lunch and walked home. The day had ended all too soon, but they had fun. The next day, Mother told him they were all going to pick blackberries. Lindsay, Mindy, and Cindy picked up their buckets and ran off ahead of their mother. "Wait for me, children," she called to them. The girls waited, but Lindsay ran on ahead, not paying attention to what Mother had told him. Again. Soon he came to the blackberry patch. As he picked, his sisters caught up with him and started filling their pails too. Soon all the pails were full, and so were the chipmunks. Mother looked at the children and remarked that they had probably eaten as many as they had picked. They agreed. Mother said they tasted so good, who could help eating them? Cindy and Mindy ran toward home with their mother. As they walked up the road, Mother called to Lindsay to come along. As he walked toward her, where his mother and sisters were, he stopped, and he spotted what looked like a stick beside the path. He stopped, then went over to it. The stick moved. As he got closer, he jumped back, startled. He had never seen a stick move by itself. He stood still for a few seconds, then advanced closer as the stick stopped moving. As he got almost on top of it, the stick moved again, right for his front paw. He let out a loud squeal. His mother, who wasn't too far ahead of him, turned to see what had caused him to squeal. She saw the snake and called for Lindsay to come to her, fast. He ran from the stick that moved, not knowing what it was. His mother told him it was a snake, and he should not be so curious. One day it would get him in more trouble than he could handle. That snake wasn't harmful, but someday you may come across one that is. They were soon on their way again, and when they arrived, Mother told them to put their buckets on the sink, and she would clean the blackberries, and perhaps they could have some blackberry dumplings for dessert after supper. The children put their buckets up, and the girls went out to play. As Lindsay started for the door, his mother called to him, "When your father gets home, we are going to have a long talk. He and I will explain to you what is out in the forest and what you have to be fearful of. It is time you learned the dangers around you. You are far too curious for your own good. One day you'll be curious about the wrong thing and get hurt." When Father came home, Mother told him about their day and said that they must talk to Lindsay about dangers around him. "He is far too curious for his own good," Father agreed. And after supper, while she set the girls to cleaning up the kitchen, Mother and Father sat down with Lindsay and talked to him about the different things he would encounter, and which of those things he should stay away from. Lindsay promised to be careful, and he would try not to be so curious. For a few days after their talk, he tried to watch for the dangers his parents had warned him about. He managed to stay out of trouble most of the time. One day, not too long after their talk, Lindsay was playing ball with his sisters. Cindy tossed the ball to him. It went over his head, and as he ran to catch it, the ball sailed over the fence and landed in a pile of leaves. As Lindsay bent down to pick it up, he saw something shiny under the leaves. Unfortunately, his curiosity was still with him. As he pushed the leaves away to see what the shiny object was, something snapped, right on his left front paw. He tried to draw back his paw, but the shiny thing would not let go. Then it began to hurt. He let out a loud squeal. His sisters came running up to see what was wrong. When they saw the trap, they ran to get their mother, telling Lindsay to lie still. Cindy cried that Lindsay was caught in a trap. Mother and the two girls ran to where Lindsay lay. "Don't move, Lindsay," his mother told him. "Just be very, very still, and we will try to get you free." He scrunched up his eyes and held his breath. Mother and the two girls pushed and pushed on the trap, but couldn't seem to spring it open. They pushed harder, and it moved just a little. Lindsay yanked his paw out of the trap just as it sprang back. Mother picked him up and carried him back to the house. She laid him on his bed and told him to be very still. She brought a pan of warm water and a soft cloth to his bedside. She bathed his paw gently with the warm water. It hurt, but Lindsay tried not to squeal too loudly. He wanted to be brave, but it really hurt. His mother then put some ointment on the paw, and it began to feel better. She sat by his bed and soothed him. Soon he drifted off to sleep. After a few minutes, she covered him up and went into the kitchen to prepare supper. Lindsay awoke to the sounds in the dining room. He raised himself up and looked around. His paw still hurt, but it wasn't as bad as it had been earlier. The ointment seemed to have taken some of the sting out of the wound. He got up and limped into the dining room table. Everyone looked as he came towards the table. "Well, son, how do you feel after your ordeal?" asked his father. "I feel better," replied Lindsay. "I don't think I'll be so curious about things anymore." Everybody replied almost at once that they thought maybe he had learned his lesson, at least for a little while. Then everyone laughed, and Lindsay soon joined in. From then on, Lindsay was very cautious and not quite so curious anymore. The end. Now this story tells you that it's okay to be curious, and it's okay to explore different things and to find out what you're interested in, but to be careful because there could be dangers behind what you're looking for. So I hope you all enjoyed the story of the Curious Chipmunk. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please leave a comment on how you enjoyed this story. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.